Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christy, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. Today is another really amazing episode, and my new friend, Dr. Charlynn Ruan, is here with me, and we're going to change lives. But before we do that, I need you to follow this podcast. If you're not already following, then you won't get notified when brand new episodes like this one come out, and I want you to know. So make sure you're following and get excited about all of the productive joy that we're creating together. But today, you're in for a treat. So this beautiful woman sitting before me is a leader. She's a therapist. She is a female-focused office where she is CEO, but she's also a mother of two, a 6 and a 9-year-old. She's a dog mom too, and a wife, and she's a travel enthusiast and against her will, currently a soccer mom, but she is learning a lot through that process as well. So welcome, Charlynn, to Productive Joy.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. And there are lots of different things that we can talk about. But what I've learned over time is that people are a little choosy in their time. And so we have to convince them to listen to us in like 30 seconds or less. So what nugget of wisdom would you drop on my listeners that would make them excited to keep listening?
Well, what I think is the most important thing for leaders to know is that it starts from the inside and working on themselves and finding their joy in their work is going to go out to their team and out to their business as well. So I am a big proponent on doing inner work if you want outer changes.
Ooh, inner work if you want outer changes. So that's what you do all day, every day, right? But that's not where you started. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you into the space that you're in today?
Yeah, actually, that is kind of what got me started into psychology.
Oh, fun.
Because I did want to make a difference in people's lives. And so I started in this is my second career. I owned another business. I was looking at how to, impact and make positive changes for women financially. And I kept finding that I was running up against our internal stuff that we had going on. I thought, you know what? You can give someone something, it is a lot harder for them to know that they can take it, for them to make a shift in how they see themselves in the world. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to do this a person at a time and then start a company to do it. So yeah, that's what got me into doing it, is still wanting to change the world, but knowing that I had to do it a person at a time.
Yeah, and we do, right? Like we do have to drill all the way down into that single human one-on-one, and we can make a really big difference. And something that I think is cool is you mentioned that your first company was about getting women to be financially sound, and now you've switched over to their internal humanness, and you've done that with a team of women, right? So it's you and a bunch of amazing boss babes who are changing the world one human at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, when I started, a lot of people start a psychology company as just like an overflow. They're like, oh, it's a private practice. I guess I'll start a company. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be able to do this alone. And so I really had a desire to do it from the get-go. I'm doing it as a group. And also it was to change the way that psychology itself, the field was. I wanted to start a company that ran in a different way than other psychology companies did. So
Say more about that. What do you mean?
Well, now it's changed a lot since COVID, and there's a lot more money in our field. Like I said, there's more investment going in, more big companies. But at the time when I was graduating, your options are you work for a large organization like the VA or the government, and then that's how you have benefits and you have job security, or you're in private practice, in which case you have no benefits, no job security. And so I felt like a lot of people were not able to do the work that they wanted to do and see the people they wanted to see because they couldn't live without the benefits. So I wanted to start a company where I gave those things and then also did a lot of the work that wasn't being done. Plus, nobody was really working with the people that I wanted to work with. Psychology is very focused on just symptom reduction and not about like that next step, which is why I named it Thrive. It's like, don't just survive, thrive. And, really had to level up the way that we did things.
So that is the name of your company, Thrive Psychology Group, right? And you are pushing people or females only to be the best versions of themselves. Which one is it? Do you do all humans?
Now we do all humans. We started out as women focused, but I think because if you think about it, how many women have gotten their husbands, their brothers, their dads, their kids. So they started, I know you'll see, what could you see? And now I see men too. So like I need them seeing, and I work a lot with founders. And there's not a lot of people that focus on founders and leaders, and I do. So I now have men too. And I love them. I love seeing them. It's not that we didn't love men. It's just there was nobody focused on women at the time. So now I've expanded.
Well, and you found your niche, right? Like, so I think the key is to stay focused at first, and that allows you to branch out, which is exactly what you did, and that's beautiful. So you mentioned that you work with founders. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what do you mean? Like, these are people who are seeking you to grow their businesses, to become better humans, to what? Fill in the blank.
All of the above. So it started with seeing a few people that had founded companies, and then they started sending their friends, and then they started sending their friends. And then I became known for it. And now I would say 75% of the people that I see have either founded companies or running companies. And they usually come to me right around the point where they're like, okay, so I have a certain level of success. I built this level of my business. I am either miserable or I have like closet bad habits that are going to take down my company if I don't deal with them. Or I thought I was going to be happy if I had this, and I'm so not happy. So and a lot of what fuels people to build a company and how you can tolerate that risk and everything that goes along with it is, if you don't work on that stuff, is the very thing that will cause you to tear it down. So it's kind of both, how the person heals, then their company tends to do well when they do better.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And so you're peeling back the layers and helping people figure out what obstacles could get in their way if they weren't careful, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, so loop back to like, oh, I got a lot out of the soccer part, is that studying sports psychology, that is one field of psychology, one branch of psychology that actually studies things like optimal performance, peak performance, how to overcome setbacks. And in the business world, for a lot of reasons, people can't be as honest, because they need to make their company look good for investors. They don't want to lose the good opinion of their board. There's a lot of reasons why they have to hide how they're doing, as opposed to sports where everything is out in front of everyone.
Yeah.
So they get to be more honest about, how do I fail and recover? How do I overcome my own stuff internally? How do I optimize? And so I've taken a lot of that and used it with business leaders, because it's hard to find it as much in the business arena.
That makes sense. So to rewind a little, before we turned the podcast on, you mentioned that yes, you're a soccer mom because your child has decided that he is going to be a professional soccer player, which is amazing. At 6 or 9, which one?
He's a 9-year-old. Yeah.
He
decided today. Yeah.
And he decided today. And you know what? Good for you for supporting that dream, and off we go. But you chose this as a learning opportunity, and you're actually studying now sports psychology specifically and learning a heck of a lot. I can see the alignment, right? You're talking overachievers, you're talking people who are driven and are pushing themselves to be amazing and wonderful. And now here we are in this space of, work and you have to get paid for it. How do you make that happen? So what was the most surprising thing that you've learned in your exploration of sports psychology that you hadn't thought about, even though you were well-versed in the psychology space?
Gosh, I think as far as like what is applicable, again, I think for the business world, we have much, much, much less of a resilience model way of looking at it. And so really the things that they implement, a lot of them meditate, a lot of athletes meditate, a lot of them do have to go to a psychologist, a lot of them get in their head, a lot of them really, to get to that next level of performance, is all mental, not physical. And I do think that it's very much the same with business leaders, where I call them like my cognitive athletes. It's the amount of stress and everything. But I think for business leaders, they often, unlike athletes, will say, I'll just work harder. I'll just take less for me. And I'm like, if you were going for the Olympics, you wouldn't say to yourself, you know what, we're going to bare bones this and just power through. I'm like, think of yourself as a peak performance athlete. What do you need to do a good job? Yeah. What do you need to be your best? And they're like, whoa. So that's a huge mindset shift, because I think a lot of people they're not seeing themselves in that way. And that's a big helpful thing to kind of help them align on that.
So I as an overachiever who tends to do exactly what you just said, I can definitely see where that might be hard for people to wrap their heads around. What are some tips and tricks you would give those of us that are in that space where we're not taking care of ourselves? What would you tell us we need to do first?
Wow. I think definitely looking at a daily routine is where it starts, and holding that, because I think you're going to have so many demands from different people. And so looking at it again, if you look like that athlete model of it, right? Meditating, focusing on intentions, really prioritizing what it is you're going to do, What is the team around you? Are you utilizing them? Because every athlete has a team. They have their coaches, they have their trainers, they have their massage therapists, they have their, their physio people, they have all of that. So what do we have? Well, like as a leader, and so why do we think we can do that alone? So that I think, like building up the team, admitting you need help, and then clearing out the other stuff so that again, you're focusing on the one or two things that only you can do. Because that's another thing I will see is that people will not focus on what only they can do. They'll try to do everything.
Yeah. You mean they don't delegate at all, right?
No,
Yeah.
it just is so hard. I can't tell you how many leaders, like I've had a conversation with them, like, wait, you still do your own laundry? Like you're a VP, what are you doing? But there's a lot of it starts out, again, it's positive in the beginning when you're in a company or where you're building yourself to be able to do all things. Then you have to smartly not do all things. Just because you can doesn't mean it's a good idea. So
We should probably dig into that just a little bit because just because you can, right? Like I'm one that, well, I can do that. Why wouldn't I? And this has happened more than once. I'm sad to admit that I am hauling 15 bags of mulch into my front yard and I have my doctorate and I go, this is probably not the best use of my time, right? I didn't though. This last time I actually hired somebody to do the front yard and it looks amazing. A whole lot better than I could have done, right? So what do you think it is that stops us from being willing to let go of some of those things that we hold on to because I can do this. I can do everything. And I would say, especially as women, we think, oh, and I'm going to be super mom at the same time. What do you think it is that makes us hold on? And what can we do to actually let go? Because saying it is one thing, but the knowing doing gap is real. So how do we actually do better?
Yeah, I think it's the blessing and curse of being a leader. One, you wouldn't be a leader if you didn't believe you could do a lot of things. And so I think part of it is that you have a lot of skills and abilities, and that's the reason that someone gets to that position in the first place. So that's part of it. And then the women part of it, I think, especially in the US, there's a lot of pressure that we're supposed to do everything.
Yeah.
And so, and then also I think, and then I felt this, and I definitely think, my clients that are working moms feel this of like, oh, I'm a bad mom if I'm not baking the brownies myself and doing the stuff and doing that. And it's just like and then I started being a therapist, I get to see what people talk about when they grow up and go to therapy. No one's talking about that they didn't have homemade brownies at their house. They don't, but they do talk about how stressed out their mom was, or, that their mom had a lot of anxiety or depression, or that they were miserable and tired. Like they talk about that. So I think, again, realizing that who we are is a lot. We need to invest in ourselves first. It's the same thing with kids as it is with our company. If we're falling down, then the other stuff all gets affected.
Oh my gosh, we need to kind of camp out on that for a minute. I vividly remember attempting to make brownies for my kids and it was a total disaster because I don't like chocolate, which is a weird just fun fact about me. And so I'd never made brownies. I made brownies. They were a complete mess, like literally just crumbs. They weren't even cute. And I just remember crying and thinking, oh, but my kids are going to be the only ones that don't. And you're right. That isn't like they've never told that story. They don't remember that. And so thank you for the reminder that the big things matter. I have a friend who talks about, she's always juggling. She's a CEO of a company and and has 3 kids and juggling all the things, but some balls are glass and some balls are rubber. And she's really careful to protect the glass balls. So yeah, I can see very much that everything you're doing is making a big difference for others. And thank you for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. And to your question about like how do you know? I do this for myself and then I encourage my clients to do a time audit. Like actually consider how you spend your moments and then go through like just for even 1 week. Look at all the things, even just, and then people don't want to do that because it's work to do more, but it is helpful to know. And then I did this for myself and I went through and I was like, okay, could I pay someone to do this? That then I would have an hour of my time. And people who are, what they make is more time dependent, that's an easier one, right?
Sure.
So for somebody who does like a psychologist, that's different. I can make more for 1 hour and pay somebody for 10 hours or something like that.
Sure.
But even for somebody else is like your productivity or like your time with your kids, again, the time probably spent making brownies is not time sitting on the floor with them playing or, going to a game or presence, like our presence to them.
Yeah.
And so like I have people do those and I do that myself where I was like, okay, what is it really costing me to go to the grocery store? What's it really costing you to like do mulch in your yard?
Yeah.
Probably
Right.
way more. Yeah. Energy, time with your kids when you could pay someone else to do it. And then things we can't pay other people to do, who we are, like to have a relationship, taking care of our body. We can pay people to help us, but ultimately we have to show up, and what goes on in our own mind. And so we have to take responsibility for those first. And then if we enjoy the other stuff or it's worth it for some reason, then we can do that. But again, those are, rubber balls.
Yeah.
And
Those are rubber balls. Exactly.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
That makes really, really solid sense. And I heard somebody say one time, actually, she was on the podcast early on, that if it keeps falling off of my to-do list, it's probably because it's not for me to do, right? So even delegating the laundry and delegating the grocery shopping, that's one thing. But also the things even within work that are not meant to be on my to-do list, they need to be on somebody else's because it's not my talent. It's not my skill. It's not in my wheelhouse, and my hour could be better spent doing something more creative, productive, whatever, which leads me to my favorite question. And my favorite question to ask on this podcast is, what's your definition or description of productive joy? What would you call productive joy?
I think like you just kind of described it. So for me, what feels like productive joy is getting in that flow state of really using my gifts, and that's what I try to help other people do as well. Because if you're doing something, you can get tired, but you're not going to feel depleted if you're doing something that is in your natural gifting and ability. And everybody does it differently. Every leader is good at something else. Some are good at management, some are not. Some are good at inspiring or, speaking or, like for me, seeing my clients doing things like this, making content, do it like that's really enjoyable for me because it's about teaching and connecting with people. As far as managing, when my company was more management heavy, I started to feel depleted because it didn't want to do employee management as much. I wanted to do back to what my thing was. And so I made modifications. So I would say do that and get courageous about it. Cause I think we kind of feel guilty if we run a company that way and think, oh, well, I'm just going to really double down on what I'm good at. But you're meant to do that. And then you're meant to do it with other people who are good at other things.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't do no man or woman is an island, right? We really need the talents of others. I do a lot of work with leveraging superpowers, right? And that's what I call your personality. And one of the activities that I often do with groups is I have them get together with people who ended up in the same type of personality. And this is not a scientific or psychological. Well, it is kind of psychological, but you're either a paperclip, a magnifying glass, a teddy bear, or a slinky. And so I put them together with other teddy bears or other slinkies, and I have them do a group project. And it is unbelievably predictable, as you can imagine, what happens with my slinkies versus my teddy bears, right? So my slinkies, they're a little all over the place. They're fun, right? But they're the idea people. Well, they're supposed to be creating this depiction of their superhero. And they have 2 songs to do it. And, 1.5 songs in, there's nothing on paper. And they have just had a wonderful conversation about all the things. But my magnifying glasses, who are super focused and task driven, have been done, in half a song. So it's also about exactly what you just said, recognizing that everybody brings something different to the table, and together is where we do our best work. So how do you do that in your business? How do you leverage the superpowers of others? Because you have a group of psychologists who are all really brilliant, I am sure, and good at some of the same things. But how do you leverage their talents on your team?
Yeah. So it's a little different with like my psychologist staff and then with my like administrative staff.
So talk about both, right?
Yeah. So for the psychologist, part of the reason again, starting a group practice was I didn't want to hire people like me. And it's interesting in the psychology world. So some of this stuff I can work with really, really heavy trauma and be fine. Like it does not like shift me in any way emotionally, but to work with couples, I can supervise people who work with couples. That drives me nuts. That would drain my energy. But there's people who love couples. And then there's somebody who loves working with, OCD specifically. There's somebody who loves working. And it's funny because we'll talk and they're like, I could never do what you do. And I'm like, I wouldn't want to do what you do. And I'm like, oh, so it happens, even though we're all in the same profession and we've chosen the same thing, even in that, we all had different things. So I'm very I think about it from like the needs that we have come in and what I feel people need and make sure we have a balanced team. So there is somebody always for what comes in. And
total sense.
and not believing I can do or should do or want to do all things for all people, which is just not true. And then, and then for the rest of the staff, thinking about like, yeah, what are they good at? And then really putting them into that and making sure, looking at it as like, again, constructing a team, like you said, like, and it's great. Like, I love that, the slinkies and the, and I think I made a mistake. A lot of leaders do at first is they tend to hire people like them, or they don't think about that they may not be people that you want to go out with and have fun with on everybody on your team because they have different personalities and enjoy different things, but you all are extremely good and you have like the same kind of values around work and what you're moving toward. And then you combine it all together. And it's great because people aren't competing the same way either, because they're just doubling down on what they're good at.
Yeah. And I think that's what produces joy, right? And one of the things that you talked about is that it comes from the inside, right? Like you have to emulate whatever you're going to put out into the world, and that allows people to do that. My definition of fun is that people feel valued and appreciated, that they have a voice and they're allowed to use it, and that they're able to leverage their talents for the greater good. So when you ask one of your administrative assistants to do something that she's really good at, then she's going to feel like she's contributing and she's going to stick around, right? And she's not going to want to quit, because we quit things that aren't fun. So, what advice would you give to a leader who is trying to construct the team that you just described, the team that everybody is in the right seat on the bus and they're doing all of the right things? What's the magic powers that you can wave over them to make that actually a reality?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think I love how you talk about like the different personalities. And so we've used different assessments and things when people come in and interview them to see, what makes it good. Because you do have to also align, I think, you have a shared vision, but different skills. You said the seats on the bus, right? With that analogy, which I love that book, The Good to Great. Like with seats on the bus, and it's like, but the bus is still going in the same direction. First of all, do they want to be on the bus? And do they go the direction that the bus is going? That's really important. And then what do they want to do? And then what are they good at? Which those aren't always the same. No. And I do think that I try to empower people to own and value what they do, because that's something where I see people get mixed up, where we're just talking about ourselves, or trying to do all things, where they're going to try to do all things, or they're going to think, well, the thing I'm good at is not as important as the thing that this person is good at. So I also try to hire people that feel comfortable in their giftings, but then make a place where they feel valued for those. And we point out what those are. And and then I try to like model too for myself of like, yeah, I'm not that great at that. You're great at that. So you do that, like, thank you. I'm so glad you're doing that. And so I think gratitude is a huge part of it.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
You've said some really brilliant things. Like gratitude is a huge part of the process, for sure. I really appreciated your time audit mention too, about, okay, what am I spending my time doing? And could somebody else do these things for me? There's power. There's just so much power in everything that you're saying. And it's clear to me that you practice what you preach, right? You are doing this because you wouldn't be able to just say it if you weren't. Who taught you that? Who taught you, or was it just learned over time? How did you figure out that there was a right way to do a great business?
Oh boy. I think I just learned over time. I think I just constructed. I also, in working with business people and also hearing their background story, I really get a lot of interesting knowledge that a lot of people don't get out in the world, right? So I get to hear the down and dirty background stuff of what's going on. And so I learn a lot from what's not just from what people are projecting out into the world, but what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And so I think a combination of that and just like actively seeking wisdom. I read a lot. I really like, for me, it's a high value of wisdom. And so if someone brings something to me and I don't know what to do with it, I'll be honest and say, I don't know what to do with that, but then I'll try to figure it out. And so I think it's just over time and experience. And then owning a company, it really does make a difference. I think the advice that someone would give leaders and company owners, if they hadn't owned one, would be probably pretty trite and silly. That sounds harsh, but I think that, they would be like, why are you doing that? That's hard. And they would leave it at that. And it's like, you're going to tell someone who's a high achiever to just like chill it? They're not going to. Just because it's hard doesn't mean that it's not good. It's just, again, with the athlete, it's hard. A lot of good things are hard. Instead of us thinking easy is good, how about we just help the person to do hard and to do it, again, like train for it.
Right. But I think that we put training in a box, right? Like we say, okay, well, I'm doing that to train for a marathon. Okay, fine. That's great. But
Right.
what are you doing to train for being the best CEO you can be or being the best boss, period, that you can be? And that takes a lot more training. And that's where your mindfulness and all of your wisdom comes in. So I would love for you to tell our listeners how they could find you, like if they're listening to you and going, "Oh my gosh, I need to spend more time with this woman," how would they find you?
Yeah. Well, they can go to the website. So it's mythrivepsychology.com is their website. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all the social stuff. So I also really like sharing as much as I can insights online. So that's fun for me. So if they can't afford to see me or if I am not available, then they can at least get some knowledge around that. And I try to share things that I think are applicable.
Well, and thank you for doing that because, you have this light and you're not hiding it, and that's pretty wonderful that you're choosing to share it and you're choosing to put it out into the world, and whoever wants to consume it consumes it, right? One thing I've learned in the last couple years is that I'm a gift, but I'm not the gift that everybody wants. And it's okay. And I just
Yeah.
be the gift to the right people.
Absolutely. And if you try to be a gift to everybody, you'll be a gift to no one.
Right, exactly, because 'cause I'm constantly morphing into something that I'm not, and that's exhausting. Like you said, that's depleting rather than just being tired because I worked hard.
Yeah. No, that's super wise. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I could talk to you forever, but unfortunately, people won't listen forever. So I have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay,
Good.
here we go. And Charlene, this is for you personally. What is your definition of fun?
Oh, wow. I think for me, it's being with people that I love and enjoy doing things that I'm really passionate about and getting in that flow state, whether it be with my kids or company or clients, but feeling in the flow feels so good to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree completely. Okay, how do you know that you are showing up as your authentic self?
Hmm. That is a high, high, high value. You said earlier about like, what I preach or what I teach is what I do. I really can't do hypocrisy. It's too much energy. So I think the way that I do is I'm very honest all the time because otherwise, how am I going to know if I'm in the right room? So I think if I have any intent, like any desire to not be fully honest, which happens less and less with age, I've lost the
Just
taste.
that you're right.
Yeah, helps that yeah, I'm very honest, and if I don't feel like that's a comfortable thing, then I know maybe it's not the right environment.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. All right. How do you channel your best self on your worst days?
Oh, again, the morning, again, practicing what I preach, doing the morning routine. So meditating, having a spiritual practice, feeling like connected, going to the gym, petting my dog, standing in the rain, like all of those things that make me feel grounded, and then setting an intention for the day. So, that really, and then usually I get to be my best self over time because I do what I love.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. What kind of dog do you have?
Oh, I have a golden retriever. Yeah. Yeah.
And our daughter also she's an English cream golden retriever. His
Of
name's
course.
Hank. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sweetest dog. He is,
Yeah.
and the hair is out of control. It's just,
But yeah, we have dueling Roombas.
yeah, right.
Yeah, like in them too at any given time. And they're beautiful. Our dog's so beautiful. I got him originally to be a therapy dog. His name's,
Uh-huh.
I call him a Flora with eyes. He just lays around and sheds. Like
Yes,
his
that's
job.
right.
Mhm.
All right. Well, if you don't know what an English cream golden retriever is, look it up. They're white and beautiful, and Hank weighs over 100 pounds. He is all big, giant monster dog with hair. Sweet.
Mhm.
Okay. Last question. And this one's an important one because you have said so many beautiful things, things that we need to remember, things that we need to remind ourselves of. But people really remember one. So, what's the one thing that you really want people to remember from our time together today?
Hmm. Oh, again, I think it all starts with you. And if things start to feel off, turn inside and try to figure out what's going wrong on the inside before you try to be messing around with what's going on the outside.
Oh,
And that would mean really like digging in, spending some quiet time, figuring out what's going on that's being projected out into the world before you try to fix the outside.
mm, there's power in those words. Thank you so much, Charlene, for just being willing to share. I know there are so many things that you could have been getting paid to do in the last 30 minutes, but you chose to be with us. And we are so very grateful that you chose to share your brilliance here on Productive Joy. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
It was fun. And for all of our wonderful listeners, thank you for being here. If you're not already a follower, follow and share this with somebody. I guarantee you know 10 people who need the message that we just got from Dr. Ruan. And so put it out there. Let people know, because if you don't tell them, they won't know. And then you can't spread productive joy. So let's do more of that. And as always, I want to encourage you to figure out a way to turn fun into action.